a bit of a disclaimer before the disclaimer, which sounds weird, but a disclaimer before the disclaimer. Tonight we were supposed to talk about multiple sclerosis from a family's perspective, and we will do that 1 week from tonight. It's going to be actually episode 2.16 instead of 2.14. We had a bit of a scheduling change, so that moved to next Tuesday. But it just so happens that today is part of March, which is basically Problem Gambling Awareness Month. And it's something that, because of the topics I've talked about before, and dealing with my compulsive gambling, it's a topic that is very important and very near to me. So we're going to talk about that tonight. And I think the more important thing is that this is the second Tuesday of March. So it's also Gambling Disorder Screening Day. So we're going to talk about compulsive gambling. We're going to talk about what the story means to me, but moreover, how do you know that you might be a compulsive gambler? So, some disclaimers. If you are looking for options to go down this road against compulsive gambling, please contact either the National Problem Gambling Helpline at 1-800-522-4700 or go to the National Council of Problem Gambling's website at ncpgambling.org. Again, 1-800-522-4700 or ncpgambling.org. You can also call 1-800-GAMBLER. Bet with your head, not over it. That is the tagline for 1-800-GAMBLER and the National Problem Gambling Helpline. And moreover, it's just something that we need to be very fully cognizant of as we are basically lured into these worlds right now where gambling is more and more out there. The next disclaimer is something that is a little more familiar in the sense that it's all tied together. If you're looking for options to go down with respect to mental health, contact SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, at 1-800-662-4357. Again, 1-800-662-4357. The service is open 24/7, 365 days a year, and is a confidential free information service for individuals and family members facing such stressors. Also, if you're feeling suicidal crisis or emotional distress and need to be put in touch with a crisis center, call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255, or go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org. You can also text the word HOME to 741-741. Those resources are also available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And lastly, even though we were supposed to talk about it tonight, we will always talk about what this organization has to do, in the sense that the National MS Society is a collective of passionate individuals who want to do something about MS now, to move together towards a world free of multiple sclerosis. MS stops people from moving, but the National MS Society exists to make sure that MS doesn't. To contact the National MS Society, please call 1-800-344-4867. Again, 1-800-344-4867, or go to their webpage at nationalmssociety.org. And on that, let's begin. March is National Problem Gambling Awareness Month. And because we are now in the month of March, and it's been a while since I talked about exactly what my story was with compulsive gambling, we're going to revisit that tonight. This is The Venture Forward. Good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you may be, and welcome. This is The Venture Forward. I am John Venturini. I am a recovering addict of overeating, obesity, alcoholism, and also, you guessed it, compulsive gambling, which is the topic for tonight. And I think the reason why I paused is because I'm thinking about what this story has turned into as far as the consequences of a very nasty addiction by way of the things that have happened in late 2019, the things that have happened in 2020. And we're not talking about the obvious one, the one that would get me demonetized. We're talking about something else. But then also the realization that this has amounted to something that has cost me any chance of being right side up, or at least out of debt. So in that of a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, which we talked about a couple weeks ago. All of this is basically cause and effect of what we're talking about tonight, and that of compulsive gambling. I have been a compulsive gambler for the better part of 20 years. And the thing is, the more money I had, the more I blew it away. So to realize that this was just as much, if not a stronger problem with everything else, of the overeating, of the alcoholism. The compulsive gambling was basically a form and function of the other two. And we'll talk about that. We'll revisit the story because, again, as we have a day dedicated to finding out whether or not someone may have a compulsive gambling problem, it's worth talking about my story once more. But before we do that, I want to say hi to those of you on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Good evening, Sarah. How are you? Hope you're doing well. On what has to be a beautiful day today. It was like 65 degrees today. It was gorgeous here. And Mr. Haas, hi, how are you? Hope it was a nice warm day over by you too, a nice spring day. And maybe we can forget about that thing called snow for a little while, although it's supposed to snow this weekend. Is it still in the forecast? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. It could be in there. Maybe it's not. Who knows? A bit of a sort of explanation and reminder and a preview of next week. The conversation we had scheduled for today was, as I mentioned in the pre-countdown, it was supposed to be the MS and what it does to the family and that sort of need for the family to grow closer to those that have MS. We have a really good interview scheduled for next Tuesday. It was, schedules got, scrambled up over here, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to having her on the show and telling her story and talking about her daughter's story as well. So that will be next Tuesday at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. One more comment is before we start talking about gambling. Matt says, I was out raking leaves in the 60+ degree weather. I know, my life is so amazing. Raking leaves, yay. Raking leaves, absolutely. As long as I don't see any sort of iceberg in front of my driveway or in front of the garage, it is definitely a great day. So I am with you there for sure. Let's talk about this now. So March is, by the National Council of Problem Gambling Awareness Month. There's a chance for people to figure out whether or not they have a problem, and then moreover to get help, whether going down the road of Gamblers Anonymous or any sort of support group. This is the month to do it. Also, the second Tuesday of March is a diagnostic day. It's a 3-4 question test that you can take to figure out whether or not you have a problem. Now, we talked about the 20 question battery before. We're going to go through that too. But if you can easily identify whether or not these things are a problem from a list of 3 questions, maybe you go down the road as far as admitting you have a problem and starting to work towards it. Work towards recovering from it. Work towards battling it. So let's talk about that. Gambling Disorder Screening Day, second Tuesday of March. Before we talk about what gambling disorder is per the per the ICD-11, as we talked about last week. When we talked about gaming disorder, gambling disorder was right next to it. Let's talk about what compulsive gambling actually is, right? Because I think we need to be reminded about this, for sure. Gambling disorder, much like gaming disorder and other disorders that basically is a dopamine rush of just visual and environment, is the uncontrollable urge to keep gambling despite the toll it takes on your life. Gambling means that you're willing to risk something you value in the hope of getting something of even greater value. It's what we talked about as not being satiated. It's the same sort of lack of satiation that an alcoholic would have when they not happy with just a second drink and they go to the third, fourth, sixth, eighth, 12th. It's the same sort of daze that goes over my eyes when I used to play craps or video poker or blackjack. You name it, I played it. It's the same sort of muting of satiation, that muting of a happy medium. So that's the first thing. Second thing is the brain's reward system is tricked. It gets stimulated. It gets overstimulated. So it goes back to the fact that it is much akin to what drugs and alcohol does. You know, you can continue to chase bets. You know, you have a loss. Oh, I'm going to chase it. Oh, the next one's going to be the big one. But then when it becomes too much, you start hiding the behavior. You start going at odd hours. You start hiding your finances, that sort of thing. Your depleted savings. You accumulate massive amounts of debt. We talk about how much unsecured debt I have, or at least not the U.S. bankruptcy court knows about. It also can resort to theft or fraud to support your addiction. Fortunately, that never went to be the case with me. Just a massive amount of debt. And also broken relationships, just a lot of brokenness. Compulsive gambling is a serious condition that can destroy lives. Although treating compulsive gambling can be challenging, many people who struggle with compulsive gambling have found help through professional treatment. Part of the treatment I've gone through counseling, has been to address the problem gambling. Going to a GA meeting twice, 3 times a month. Virtually, because again, how could you do that when everything was closed? These days it's a little easier, but the group that I go to is based in California, so it's just easier for me to join a Zoom. Making full realization of what everything is, and then also understanding your role with it, and then, how do you make amends? Going through the 12 steps, like everything else. And at some point, we'll address the 12 steps again. But the 12 steps is very cognizant in that of compulsive gambling and going to a place like Gamblers Anonymous. Good evening, Sue. How are you? Glad you're doing well. Glad to see you. So we talk about this in 3 high bullet points. What are the signs and symptoms of compulsive gambling? That's a question that comes to mind. So when you're preoccupied with gambling, you first think about how you're going to get there, but then secondly, how you're going to get more money to gamble. And when there's lack of satiation, more times than not, you're going to be hitting the ATM or heading for more money at the cashier desk or whatnot. That's the sickness that compulsive gambling brings. The question of having increasing amounts of money to get the same thrill. Especially when you have more money and you realize that the sort of satiation or same sort of dopamine drip does not exist at 50 cents as it does with $50. Feeling restless or irritable when you try to cut down. So it's like going to Vegas for 4 days and having nothing to do. How can you have nothing to do in Vegas? But that's another story for another day. And becoming fidgety and needing that dopamine drip. Gambling to escape problems or relieve feelings of helplessness, guilt, anxiety, or depression. So this is where the joint addiction comes in. When you're fighting something else, When you're fighting any sort of problem that might be co-addiction, that might be codependency, whatever it is, truly environmental, but the way you cope is finding the most nefarious of firefighters and try to put out that with something that can be a dopamine drip, such as gambling. Never good. It's not addressing the problem. It's just masking it. So, another one would be lying to family members or others to hide the extent of your gambling. It's when someone asks, oh, how much did you lose? Coming up with a fictitious number. Because you know what the true number is, but you'll never admit to it. I was usually off by a degree of 3, maybe 4. How much did you lose? Oh, 500. It's more like 2,000. Maybe 3,000. Again, lying about it. Being dishonest. Lack transparency. That sort of thing. Jeopardizing or losing important relationships, a job, a school, work opportunities because of gambling. It's actually one of the questions in the 20 question questionnaire that we're going to go through. When you find yourself doing that, because 1, you're ashamed, or 2, you don't want to talk to exactly how bad the problem is, that in itself is a major red flag. Resorting to theft or fraud to get gambling money, and then asking others to bail you out of financial trouble because you gambled money away. That's the list. Those are signs and symptoms, but it could be easily surmised by a list of 3 questions that is usually talked about on the second Tuesday of March. Something called the Brief Biosocial Gambling Screen. It's based on the DSM-4. 3 questions, and then 1 final question about how do you feel about gambling now. So, first 3 questions talk about the last 12 months. Funny enough, I will be at 1 year in April. So during the past 12 months, have you become restless, irritable, or anxious when trying to stop or cut down on gambling? Where did we just hear that from? It was in that previous list. During the past 12 months, have you tried to keep your family or friends from knowing how much you gambled? And then during the past 12 months, did you have such financial trouble as a result of your gambling that you had to have help with your living expenses from family, friends, or welfare? I am proud to say that I haven't gambled in over 300 days. I think it's gonna be 2. It's gonna be 1 year in April. Now, the parenthetical therein is cutting the overeating, not drinking anymore. This stuck out because during the middle of a, not going to mention the word because I don't want to get demonetized, but during something that is a change in my life, which starts with the letter D, ends with the letter E, an audit happens. Great timing. Great timing to look at 1099 forms and figure out how much of a degenerate I really was. If there was any time for me to stop, now's the time. Because if I'm able to clean everything else up, or at least have a solid mind about it, why not that? Moreover, if there's any chance for me to be right side up or try to live a better life, now's the time to address it. The source of those questions, by the way, is a site called divisiononaddiction.com. I had a graphic and everything. Did I bring it up? No. But it looks like this. It's by the Cambridge Health Alliance, basically a member of the Harvard Medical School. If you wanted to figure out exactly whether or not you have a problem, nothing like the second Tuesday of March to figure out you have a problem. So, there it is. divisiononaddiction.org. Couple of slides previously are based on the Mayo Clinic. The next couple slides are based on Gamblers Anonymous. We'll talk about that in a couple seconds. Had a couple more people join us on Facebook and YouTube. Ob says, finally caught you. Ha ha ha. Hey, how are you, Ob? Hope you're doing well. Thank you. Thank you, bro. I appreciate that a lot. And Jenny, hope you're having a great evening yourself as we talk about compulsive gambling on this Gambling Disorder Screening Day, part of Compulsive Gambling Awareness Month. So, we know this. There is a questionnaire. There is a 20-question questionnaire that we talked about on the show back in season 1. We're going to talk about those questions again. And the parenthetical therein, too, is there are a lot of parentheticals to tonight's episode, is that if you have 6 or 7 yeses, that is something to keep an eye out on. When you're at 13, you have addiction. Now, I've heard other places that the number 11 yeses out of the 20 is addiction. We'll go through all the questions. It will mirror a lot of what you're seeing in front of you, but we'll go through them in great detail. And I promise this time around, the font isn't the size where you're feeling like you're taking an eyeglass exam, or eye exam, rather. "20 questions. Let's look at the first 10. So, question 1, did you ever lose time from work or school due to gambling? No. Not for me. I did deviate a bit in the sense that if I had 3 hours to get to the airport, I might take 4 hours to get to the airport because along the way there might be a casino on the way down to the airport. Is that technically a yes? Maybe. Maybe not. But I'll put a flag next to it for sure. 2. Has gambling ever made your home life unhappy? Absolutely. Yeah. I'm being completely honest here. Completely transparent. It made my home life unhappy in the sense that there are many restless nights. Many restless nights. For sure. 3, did gambling affect your reputation? I don't think transparently or explicitly, but I could probably rest assured that it probably was discussed. So I'll put a flag next to that one too. 4, have you ever felt remorse after gambling? Yeah. When you lose massive amounts of money, you feel remorse. So, sure. 5, did you ever gamble to get money with which to pay debts or otherwise solve financial difficulties? Not so much towards the end. Somewhere along the way, yeah. And I do think that sort of dopamine drip was inherited for a long time. So, yes. 6, did gambling cause a decrease in your ambition or efficiency? Yeah. I think at times, yeah. Not completely throughout, but there are times where it definitely peaked up or peaked higher than not. 7, after losing, did you feel you must return as soon as possible and win back your losses? Yeah. There was a lot of chasing. Here's the sick thing. Even when there were massive wins, there was chasing because there never was satiation. I was never satiated. That drip wasn't there, and I wanted to have more of that drip. As I cleverly called it in shows before, the ding-dings and the whoop-whoops. I needed to hear more ding-dings and whoop-whoops. It's a sickness. It very much is a sickness. Talking about joint addiction, when you have a problem with alcoholism, problem with overeating, it wouldn't be a lack of any sort of stretch of imagination, rather, to have a problem with gambling as well. So, 8, after a win, did you have a strong urge to return and win more? Yeah. Lack of satiation. Thinking, oh, if that happened, oh, a bigger one's going to happen. Right? Talk about the biggest win I ever had gambling. $50,000. $50,000. And the sense is, it was done using mechanisms that should not exist. We talk about the onslaught of online gambling. We talk about the onslaught of the ability to gamble from home, especially given what's happened in the last year, where everything is shut down and in quarantine and code red and code yellow. The massive numbers of those sites that appeared out of nowhere just is jaw-dropping. But the site in which that win happened, the site that's not supposed to be against us, was the lottery. It was the lottery, of all things. So there's a major warning sign there too. You know, we say in Pennsylvania, every state's different, right? The Pennsylvania lottery is there to support older Pennsylvanians. God only knows how much those older Pennsylvanians are dumping money into the PA lottery. So, yeah. 9. Did you often gamble until all your money was gone? Yeah. Yeah. And 10, did you ever borrow to finance your game? Yep. So, yeah, definitely much an addict. A couple things were questionable. I would say out of the 10 that you see in front of you, I would say I'm a solid 7, maybe 8. Let's see how some of you have done. Jenny says, keep up the great work. Thank you, Jenny. Appreciate that. Appreciate you. Big time. Ob says, no, yes. You're missing 6. So I'm going to say you're yes on 6. So yes, no. So you're yes for 5 and 6, and no for the other 8. We're 2 out of the 10 questions. As I mentioned, 11 to 13 is a warning sign. So you're probably fine from that regard. You know yourself better than anyone else. I know me. Definitely wasn't in a good place. But I'm glad you didn't have that problem. And knowing your story, Ob, I'm very proud of you. You've tackled an awful lot. So to not have this on your list, incredible. Ob says 6 is no. So you got 1 yes out of the 10. Let's go to the next 10. Question 11. Have you ever sold anything to finance gambling? No. That's the first true no out of the 10 that you've seen previously. Some 7 out of 11 now. 12. Were you reluctant to use gambling money for normal expenditures? Again, I'm fortunate to say no. There was more gambling money as I was doing additional work and that sort of thing. I didn't use that money wise. I didn't build a war chest, as we say, as my bankruptcy attorney called it. Gotta build a war chest. Especially now that I'm settling on a lot of that, the unsecured debt. 13. Did gambling make you careless of the welfare of yourself or your family? Yeah, in the sense that I ate more. Usually these places are next to very high class restaurants, and never the two are. These days you think about Vegas and what Vegas has turned into. It's become a restaurant haven because everybody's gambling there. So I guess from that perspective, maybe. I guess also because of the fact that I have massive amounts of debt, technically, yeah, I guess that would be true. Although there was money, fortunately. I know people who gambled everything down to practically nothing. So I would say 13 is definitely yes for them. So I guess, from that perspective, I'm fortunate, but I'm also was very troubled. 14. Did you ever gamble longer than you had Did you ever gamble longer than you had planned? Yes. There's a reason why there are not any clocks inside the casino. There's a clock on your wrist. Fortunately, that works. But by the time you lose track of things, you've spent hours upon hours, no matter what the game you're playing is. So, yeah. 15. Have you ever gambled to escape worry, trouble, boredom, loneliness, grief, or loss? Absolutely. Goes back to that whole joint addiction thing, right? So, yeah. 16. Have you ever committed or considered committing an illegal act to finance gambling? Fortunately, absolutely not. So, there are limits. 17. Did gambling cause you to have difficulty in sleeping? Yes. For the amount of money that was lost? Yeah. 18. Do arguments, disappointments, or frustrations create within you an urge to gamble? Yeah. When you're not happy, and you go to a place where you get that instant dopamine drip. The place with the ding dings and the whoop whoops. 19. Did you ever have an urge to celebrate any good fortune by a few hours of gambling? Yeah. That's why you're still chasing after you win, because you have that dopamine drip over and over and over again. You want to win more. You're not happy with that. Do you sack some of that away? Yeah. Does that money end up getting gambled? Yeah. That 50,000 we talked about earlier took about 2.5 months. 20. Have you ever considered self-destruction or suicide as a result of your gambling? No. Although one may argue the fact that I was eating so much may have been a form of a slow suicide. I don't know. And it's something I've debated about with my therapist. Technically, no, but you could probably draw some inference that maybe the answer to my number 20 is actually yes. So of the 20, you have 16 yeses when I was at the height of my gambling. And that is compulsive gambling. That is, without any stretch of the imagination, compulsive gambling. It is 6 digits of unsecured debt. It is finding yourself underwater even though you've been very fortunate to work several projects and do many different things. You're still underwater. That's what this does. You couple that with the fact that you're dealing with someone that at his worst was 480 pounds, someone who was drinking multiple times a day. Yeah, that is why the 3 numbers are on my board. That's why we talk about the days I track my food, the days I haven't drank, the days I haven't gambled. It's the story of my life. And that's why we're talking about it. But that's why also the month of March, that's why this second Tuesday in March is a very important day. To become very cognizant of the fact that it was a problem. Without question, a major problem. Ob continues and says, I'm tackling things right now, but I'll win. I hope you don't mean that by sense of gambling. Those games are set up in a casino for a reason. The casino makes money no matter what happens, so don't think you're going to win. There are other ways to be abundant. There are other ways to have a good sense of prosperity. It does not necessarily have to do with your finances or what you win or whatnot. It's a very ugly habit. And unless you're doing something with very, very, very disposable income, don't do it. Don't do it. The tagline for the Bureau of Compulsive Gambling in New Jersey, also the same tagline they use in Nevada, is bet with your head, not over it. Oh. Bet with your head, not over it. And in my case, you shouldn't even bet at all. And then Op says, no. Yeah, Op, you're fine. There are many people in this country, many people in this world that are not fine. So, you're very fortunate, Op. Hold on to that. When people come to you and say, hey, I have a problem gambling, be quick to help them. For sure. Good evening, Jeanette. How are you? Hope you're doing well. And Op says, no, losing interest in program. He says, yes, I am. Good. Very good. So I guess the next thing that's worth talking about here is the fact that Loyalty at what cost? Those are 6 places where I used to gamble: Atlantic City, Las Vegas, Pennsylvania, including the PA lottery, Delaware, Maryland, Connecticut. I probably gambled a little bit in Florida as well. But when I talk about loyalty, boy, did I have so many loyalty cards across many different places where they try to lure you and get you to come in, offer you a free room, offer you comp dollars, offer you to do this. They do that because they know you're going to end up throwing back 10 to 20 to 30 times that. So, yeah. At what cost? At the cost that you end up leaving there broke. At the cost that you end up a lot worse than you ever was. So, something to think about for sure. Ob says, I help anyone that wants it. Good on you, Ob. Good on you for sure. Jeanette says, can I put these questions to drugs? Yeah. There are a lot of similar mechanisms to drug use, drug addiction, than there is with the compulsive gambling. A lot of the same mechanisms. Yeah. Whether it's a question of going through the checklist for Narcotics Anonymous versus Gamblers Anonymous, you'll find a lot of similarities. Jeanette says, Wheeling Island here has a big casino, and I went there a lot, but only gambled when I was high. Right. If you go through the gambling questionnaire and you find yourself at 11, 12, 13 plus, then you know that the gambling was a problem too. If not, then fortunately gambling wasn't the joint addiction with being high. But again, it's the question of being tricked and having the dopamine receptors just keep on dripping and dripping and dripping. So that's a question of loyalty. I guess the next piece of this is treatment. Compulsive gambling is treatable. Recognizing the problem is the first step towards treatment. Just like any sort of recovery program. It doesn't even have to be 12 steps. It could be smart recovery. It could be any of the recovery circles that you use. But you have to recognize you have a problem. When you recognize that you have a problem, you have to remain steadfast to try to combat it. Can't deviate towards fixing it and then all of a sudden cured. Doesn't happen. There'll never be a day where I say I'm cured of these things. They will always be things I have to remain cognizant of. Psychotherapy in the form of individual group settings can help. 12-Step Gamblers Anonymous is useful. Working for my chip for Gamblers Anonymous. The program adheres to abstinence principles similar to that of substance abuse and alcohol use. So again, you find the sort of steps that you find in Gamblers Anonymous very similar than what you find with very similar to what you find in Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, that sort of thing. Medication-wise, a lot of the same sort of medications are prescribed. So antidepressants, mood stabilizers, opioid antagonists, or narcotic antagonists. It's very much something that is talked about within a lot of therapeutical circles, or a lot of consulting circles, a lot of that sort of thing, whether in group setting or individual setting. So, there's a lot of questions as far as the validity of the DSM-4, DSM-5, as far as figuring out whether or not you truly have someone who has a problem with compulsive gambling. There is mechanisms, questionnaires to trigger that. You saw some of those questions before. There are other questionnaires out there that help therapists figure that out. But there are mechanisms, and when it does get figured out, there are ways to treat it. You're not alone, and there isn't any sort of way that it's not a hopeless situation as long as you, one, realize you have a problem, and two, you're willing to fix it. So treatment's very important, for sure. I'll go back to me over here. Yeah, and as far as the numbers, as far as the amount of money I've lost gambling, way too much. Way too much. I find that at times I lost the ability of just even caring about anything else. And when you lose the care of anything else, what else do you have? Then you really have a problem. You really have a problem. Where you try to, every time you go on vacation to place XYZ, and you're trying to figure out, hey, what kind of casinos do they have here? Really? It was that bad. It was that bad. Mr. Weber, good to see you this morning. Might be still evening over there. Proud of you, JV, and anyone who has or is facing similar challenges in their lives. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you. Thank you. Sue says, we used to call out free buffet a $100 dinner. We decided to rip the coupons up. Yeah. I had a very bad nickname for that casino that was en route to the airport. I used to call it a free soda. I used to always talk about the free soda. I'm going to stop for free soda. Was it really real? It wasn't. It was far from real. On the good days, I talk about the number of cases of free soda I won. I never talk about the number of cases of free soda I gave back and lost. Right? So. Ob says, I used to push the steps. Now I just suggest try counseling, therapy, smart recovery, etc. And if you still struggle and it does not work, try the 12 steps. It's good advice. That is very good advice. The steps, I've had really good conversations about the steps. It doesn't work for everybody, and they have other ways of treating it. As long as they're treating the hallmarks of what is entailed with recovery, then they're doing the right thing. They're doing the good thing. They're doing the thing that is important for them. One step at a time, one foot in front of the other, right? That's what it's about. Sue says, congrats on your progress. Thank you, Sue, very much. Jeanette says, we need a Gamblers Anonymous here in West Virginia. There are none, and so many gambler addicts. I don't know if 1-800-GAMBLER would work for West Virginia. I'm sure it would. It's the same sort of group that runs 1-800-GAMBLER could probably work in West Virginia. If you don't find a number, I could definitely find one for you, Jeanette. Especially with the fact that there are major casinos in West Virginia bordering within 45 minutes of DC. So we won't mention names of casinos, but you can take a wild guess at that one. And yeah, I spent some time there too. Ob says, while going to other towns and cities while hitching across Canada, I always looked for a bar. See? You're always looking for some place, whether it's a bar or a casino or a gaming hall or whatever. I think the thing about gaming halls, quick little aside, when you have a lot of states open up the ability for gas stations, for small bodegas or whatnot, to put 10 to 15 machines in there, Now there are other places that people can go to waste their hard-earned money. Jeanette says, oh my God, that's so true. Free soda, the roping. Yeah, the free soda. And, we'll talk about alcoholism for a second. I mean, when I didn't detect that and when I was drinking, boy, the amount of free booze that was on the floor, incredible. It's like just not a good place. Not a good place. And if you try to simplify it and make it as innocent as the free soda, it could still be just as bad. And Ob basically relates it back to bar and women. Yeah. It's a situation for you to spend some time to get that sort of excitement. In the case of gambling, lose massive amounts of money. And be fooled by the fact that maybe you win every now and then. But sooner or later, that money goes back. In my case, it could be a massive win, and that money goes back. That's why you hear horror stories of those that win Powerball or Mega Millions and end up losing all the money anyway. because deep down inside, they probably paid a lot of money to get there, so there is a problem. You never talk about the one person that, oh, I spent $2 on a ticket and I won millions upon millions. No, never works that way. They spent a lot of money on a weekly basis or a semi-weekly basis. And perhaps at one point they get lucky. But when they have a problem, there is no mechanism to say, okay, that's it. There is no that's it. They keep going and going and going. So it's just, it's crazy. Ob says a friend of mine won $2 million in 1991 and was broke in 1 year. 1 year. There's no investment planning there. There's no financial management there. 1 year. Gone. Sarah says, are there any social aspects of gambling casinos, or is the addiction an isolating one? Yes and no. I think when you have a very big problem with gambling, the bounds for which you gamble have no bounds. The same sort of thrill you get within a casino for that free soda is the same sort of thrill you get within the gas station, which is the same thrill that you get playing the lottery, which is the same thrill you play on your mobile phone or your tablet or your computer. There are no bounds. We've removed the bounds. You can gamble from anywhere. I know freedom is an important thing. Freedom, freedom, freedom. Sure. But when you have a problem, are you really free? No. And the state is making money left, right, and sideways because they're getting tax money on all that gambling. Whether it's the tax money that's going to all of the online casinos or the money that's inherent within the lottery. Either way, the state or commonwealth is making out left, right, or sideways. The one name I wanted to see. Archie, I'm glad to see you. Start a meeting. In the meantime, there are Zoom meetings for Gamblers Anonymous that are available for people all around the world. Archie, can I post a link for ours? Let me know. I'll definitely will do that. Good to see you, by the way, Archie. Hope you're doing well. Ob says, I heard stories people would pee on their seats because they don't want to lose their spots. Is that true? Yeah. It's very true. Did I ever do that? No. Not at all. Have I seen it happen? I think I did. Wasn't me. When you have it sick and you're hanging around those sort of people, if that's not a context clue that you're doing the wrong thing, I don't know what is. I'll share this story. The amount of fighting I would see over the good machine or the bad machine or whatever is crazy. Especially when you're just trying to grab dinner with your family and maybe we just wanted to hang out and talk afterwards, but instead it turned into playing and bearing witness to all of that. Not a good place. Never a good place. Because there are people there that are within the gears of addiction, and they keep on spinning those gears and they're stuck in them. So, yeah, that definitely does happen. Archie, that's great. Yeah, let me know and I'll put it into the comments for this live stream for tonight. And Archie, at some point, I would love to have you back on the show. We got other topics that you were so great the last time, and I loved having you on the show. So let's definitely have you back on the program soon. Ob says, I thought a good opportunity when I first heard of it. I was thinking of selling piggy banks at the front door of a casino. You know, Ob, I'm never going to shy away from anyone's entrepreneurial spirit. So, good luck to you. As he winks. Very funny, Ob. Very funny. My mouth was getting dry. I apologize, folks, for sure. Ha ha ha. Triple on. Yeah. So the moral of the story is this: Gambling was a part of my life for 20 years. Maybe, yeah, 20 years, probably 21 years. Um, I'm glad to say that it hasn't been part of my life for the last 331. It's not going to be a problem anymore because I know how much it destroyed me. So it is really real, and if I can talk about this and remind people of how destructive of a behavior it is, I most certainly will. As far as Ob's entrepreneurial idea, he doesn't believe in supporting other people's sickness. Good for you. Absolutely. I mean, Ob, at least you could draw a line somewhere. Yes, it is. Thank you, Christina, for this mug. I love this mug and I love you. Thank you. Hi, by the way. Sarah says, of all the addictions you've talked about, gambling is the one I have the most trouble relating to. Yeah, not many people relate to it unless they've been knee deep in it. And I think the more that we are home, the more that we are not in places that we normally would have been, the more it becomes a problem. I need to definitely get statistics on last year and the amount of people that were actually gambling online. Sarah, it's going to shock you. It affects people. When you have nothing else to do and you're looking for that excitement, that's what they do. Now, granted, if you don't take any sort of liking to gambling in the first place, it's not a problem at all. But when there's the littlest of, like a game where you can get something back in return from, that's where that cycle usually begins. Um, yeah, I going back to your comment for a second. Yeah, for many. Many have trouble relating to it, but it definitely is a problem. In my case, it turned into, boy, I need to claim bankruptcy because I have so much debt. Hey to you. Hope you're doing well over there. Good to see you this evening. Haven't done this in a while, but hearts at you. Hearts to all of you. I love all of you. You guys are fantastic for joining me every Tuesday and Thursday and on Fridays. You guys are awesome. And telling the story tonight is never easy. I go back and I play the tape back and everything, and I start thinking about the amount of time and the amount of money and the amount of relationships I ruined because of it. So it's never an easy conversation to have. I think the more I talk about it, the more I am free with it. I think the fact that I basically spend a lot of time staring at those 1099 forms and trying to assess how much I won, how much I lost during an audit. And then I think it gets all rehashed because, hey, I'm bankrupt. So I think coming to grips to what it was, but also being okay with it and realizing that there's a step forward now because it's just as dangerous to me as everything else. But it takes a long time to get to that bridge. It takes a very long time to get to that bridge. Sue says, I see more and more online advertised on TV with our local casinos. Sad, yeah. Very much so in the Philadelphia area. A lot of advertisements in the Philly, South Jersey area for the casinos around here. A lot of online casinos in PA. A lot of online casinos in New Jersey. So yeah. They're not getting the foot traffic because of something I can't talk about because I don't want to be demonetized. But there you have it. Living here in Nevada, I definitely have witnessed the problem of gambling addiction. There you have it. There you have it. If you don't realize it in Nevada, you definitely realize it in South Jersey. by Atlantic City, you definitely realize that in any major city that has a casino or 10 of them, it's, it stares at you and you see it around you. It's like, oh my God. Oh my God. Archie says the Saturday meeting is run by your friend Aaron, 10 a.m. Yes. And I will have this in the comments, but to join the Thursday 8 p.m. meeting or Saturday 10 a.m. meeting, there's a Zoom link there. There's the meeting ID. It will be in the comments here. I will make sure that comment is also on the YouTube comments and also on the Twitch comments as well. Archie, thank you for sharing that. Actually, I'm going to favorite this for a second. Ob says to Sarah, the way I relate it, the way I can relate it to, let's say there's a song in my head and I cannot get it out of my head. I play that song on YouTube or listen to it on CD. Ob, okay, very much. It is the obsession of the mind, as you say. I think when we are self-destructive from other emotional situations. I'm not going to talk about the psychiatric or mental sort of lapse that I've had with the exacerbation in the MS, but you'll use that sort of analogy for another song, and then you get gravitated to a time back that you really shouldn't be going back to. So, yeah. Sue says, just remember you've done well addressing all this, and you've helped me, maybe, with everyday progress. Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that. Thank you, Sue. Appreciate that. I say Sarah because the next comment is from Sarah, but Sue, thank you very much. Sarah says, how did you get to that bridge? What made you realize what was going on, and what made you stop? I'm going to take Christina's mug real quick to have a sip because it's going to take me a second. We could rewind back to February of last year. And at that point, one of the major changes in my life took place and has been taking place for about 3 or 4 months. Trying to figure out my way, and I thought everything was good. And then I get a letter, registered mail letter, from the Internal Revenue Service saying, you've been selected for an audit. So outside of 4-letter words, a countless barrage of 4-letter words, the first thing is, did a certain person that used to be here see this? Yeah, she did. But then also, how do I get all that paperwork together? How do I fight this? How much trouble am I in? That sort of thing. How much will this cost in the end? What sort of paperwork do I have to provide? What sort of lengths do I have to go back on what is a very nasty habit that I did not take much sort of documentation of? That sort of thing, Sarah? Yeah. It took me realizing that. It took some very long phone calls with a tax professional trying to walk me through what is needed for the meetings with the IRS. Also trying to figure out how this is basically working with another thing that's going on. I'm not talking much about that word, but you know what word I'm talking about. So, yeah, that was the telltale sign. If you look at the dates, January, February of 19, being 480 pounds, not being able to walk more than 5 feet without huffing and puffing and needing the set, sweating on the coldest winter's days. Fast forward to May, realizing I'm not going to be able to lose 300 pounds unless, I'm not going to be able to lose 300 pounds if I drink like this all the time. Oh, by the way, why am I still drinking all the time and still feeling sick? And going out to dinner and getting myself sicker to my stomach, drinking 2 pitchers of jalapeno cucumber margaritas, drinks of Manhattans and bourbon and then more wine, and then throwing up massively at 3:45 in the morning the next morning. So that's why that's the second date. It takes a full year to realize there's a problem here. And if I want to be living myself a cleaner life, a healthier life, not only physically, but mentally, financially, and having the IRS give me a very major hint, that was that bridge, Sarah. That was the bridge indeed. I think now, going through the bankruptcy, it gets re-examined. But now I know that I'm in a better place handling it than I was in February of 20. So that's where the bridge is. Unfortunately, I didn't jump off that bridge, right? So there you go. Whenever I think of gambling addiction, I think of the Flintstones episode when Fred got addicted to gambling. Bet, 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 bet. Does anyone else remember that episode? In fact, I do. Was it one of the war cries I had? No. But a funny episode? Absolutely. Good memory. Very good memory. Sue says, soon I will have 2 years not smoking, so all of your talks help. Different problem, but same. Yeah. Congratulations, Sue. Congratulations on your 2 years. To be able to fight addiction and have the better hand over it is an incredible work towards the right direction. Incredible journey for you to take. And I'm so proud of you, Sue, to say the least. As I'm proud of all of you that are in recovery and that have overcome a lot of things in your life. Very much appreciative of you. Very much proud of you. Ob says Fred was addicted to shiny object syndrome. There you go. Matt says, I have a gambling tax question. May you ask? Yeah, of course you can. Absolutely. Matt, I'll be on for another 5-10 minutes. Yeah, go ahead and ask your question, Matt. Congratulations indeed. Congratulations indeed. Sarah says, wow, the IRS as grace. Who knew? Well, yes and no. Yes and no. Sarah, it's a little more complicated than that. But yeah, I think because of when it occurred, because of when the audit popped up, because of the interesting events that last year had, I think somewhere inherent in all of that is some grace. But nevertheless, glad I went through it. Every moment is a gift. Glad to be accountable and understand how bad of a problem it is. So, yeah. IRS has grace. For sure. Mr. Haas says, if you get a 1099 for winning a contest, is there a way to get the tax burden lower? In other words, do you have to claim it all as income? It depends on the amount of money that has been won. If you have won more than $1,200 or more, then yes, you have to claim it. The way you can offset that is showing $1,200 in loss or more than that. So it goes to the point where you have to have very good documentation of your wins and losses. That's why you get a lot of those player cards at casinos. That's why there's also a full accounting of the win-loss statement on a site like palottery.com. At the end of the day, you're basically collecting and accounting for all of the gambling activity. If you could show a massive loss, you could pass that on with your 1040 filing. But here's a word of warning. Not all of it will be accepted. It's also based on how good the bookkeeping is. So if you're talking a small amount, I wouldn't worry about it. I would say once you get to 5 digits, I would keep closer eye on it. And I say this because I say this with the full disclaimer that I am not an accountant. I am not a bookkeeper. I've lived through this, but I'm not a tax professional. And Matt, consult your tax professional when you think about these things at all times. That is my disclaimer. I'm keeping to that. Sarah says, you're pretty amazing, JV. Sarah, you're very amazing too. I appreciate you and I absolutely adore you. Thank you for sure. Thursday. Thursday, we're going to do a bit of a review. We're going to talk about a lot of the topics we talked about in season 1. We're going to talk about where we are with the MS story. We're going to talk about being close to going for Ocrevus or Ocrevus or whatever we want to call it today. It's pronounced different things. But that disease-modifying treatment, that is this semi-annual 4-hour infusion to try to basically stop my body from destroying itself. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the weight loss, where I sit with that. We'll talk about how I'm basically trying to gain a little weight now by muscle building. We'll talk about the sobriety. We'll talk about inching closer and closer to the 2-year point with the sobriety. And we'll talk about everything else we talked about. Codependency, we'll talk about code-addiction. We'll discuss everything. Thursday's basically a catch-up, but also a preview of what we're going to be talking about in the next few weeks. We're going to, as I said at the beginning of the episode, the conversation that was scheduled for tonight will be next Tuesday, at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. So next Tuesday, which would be March 16th, 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. We're going to talk about what a mother goes through when her daughter is diagnosed with MS and the role that family has when someone is suffering with MS. It's going to be a great conversation. I look forward to having it. And then next Thursday, we're looking to continue the story with another friend of mine as far as MS. We're leading up to May when the MS walks begin and people are raising money for the MS walks. We'll talk more about that on the Thursday episode for sure. But until then, I'm going to tell you the same thing I tell you at the end of every single Venture Forward or VF Talks. Stay safe, stay sane, stay strong, stay sober. You're worth it. I'll see you Thursday night, 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. Have a great night.